It's great to see everybody here. Welcome to our, it would be our we missed one, fourth webinar for this year. Um, Everybody here obviously knows what we're about, but seeing as we're on YouTube and open to the public now, I'd just like to give a little bit of a recap as to who we are and what we do. So we are the Visitor Studies and Interpretation Group of South Africa. We are a group of professionals who get together. We're part of all the free choice, well, not all, many free choice learning centers throughout South Africa and some internationals as well, involved in interpretation and visitor studies. So we are responsible for the tourism products that we put out there for visitors, and we are responsible for making the experience amazing for everybody. And to do that, we do signage, we do exhibits, we do walking trails, we do in-person talks, keeper talks, talks with animals, all sorts of varieties of interpretation. And monthly we get together to have webinars or workshops where we get to learn more from each other, basically, and improve our skills. So today we have a talk on listening to the public, using content analysis to shape mobile museum experiences. And Robyn is our speaker today. She is one of our committee members. Yay! Love it when the committee gets to be on screen as well. Often we're just behind the scenes doing things. So Robyn Symons is the curator and geocommunicator at the Wits School of Geosciences, where she leads public engagement and outreach initiatives. She recently completed her MSc in Science Communication and Public Engagement with a focus on mobile exhibition design. She has collaborated on a wide range of science communication projects, but is currently having lots of fun fabricating and customizing her own geoscience education trailer for the Wits School of Geosciences. And it's called Rolling Stones Mobile Museum, which already to me sounds like lots of fun. So anyway, so she will be telling us how content analysis of public reports from a meteorite event is being used as a formative tool to inform exhibit development. Robyn will share how this analysis offers insight into what excites and resonates with audiences, particularly around the unexpected emphasis on sound. We'll explore how content analysis can support both visitor studies and early-stage exhibition design, and how insights from public discourse might lead to creative reinterpretations. Sounds like lots of fun. Sounds like, well, I got a bit of a behind the scenes earlier before we started at 3, got to hear that she's having lots of fun doing this. So Robyn, please share with everybody what you're doing, what you have been doing, and let us know how we can do what we do better.
Oh my, I don't know if I can tell people how to do things better. I can see there's some pretty amazing experts in the audience, which is very intimidating. Okay, well, this is a mix of about 2 talks that I've had to give this year. So I'm hoping it'll flow nicely. So the first part of this is a content analysis that I got to do as part of a paper. Can you see my screen? Is everyone, can you see
Yep.
my, okay. So at about beginning of this year, we wrote up a paper based on the meteorite fireball that went over the Eastern Cape about August 2024. And this led to our meteorite team and several meteorite teams from like the Astronomical Society and Nelson Mandela University and Rhodes. They all went out and they had to go do site visits and eyewitness reports. And so I was pulled into this study because they said, oh, well, look at all of this interesting public engagement stuff. Don't you want to write something in this paper? And so I got to see all of the transcripts from these reports, and it was just loaded with the most amazing information. And so I wanted to do some kind of analysis with my budding evaluation skills that I've somehow crammed into my brain during my MSc. But it was a really lovely project. So the fireball just triggered an incredible sequence of sort of natural and organic public excitement. And so I really wanted to build my communications on what had triggered that and what people had already engaged with in this event. And we can see it was really layered between social media and like normal, this was traditional media. There was layers of misinterpretation, but there was also some incredible sites like Snow Report and Leicester FM that were spreading information in such a beautiful and organic way. And as scientists, we were just completely overwhelmed. The information came so quickly and completely outpaced almost all traditional forms of information that you'd usually get from these types of events, like from satellites, that we were almost completely dependent on the public to sort of drive the study. I mean, even just in the course of me going back and reviewing some of the posts, I still found that people were still posting new videos. So some of this information is out of date because we're actually continuing to get more and more reports. And so part of the team was studying these reports that people submitted to the Astrological Society for specifics on how the meteorite entered the atmosphere, the path it took, and try to work out where it made landfall. And then this is Finitra, I can never pronounce his surname, but he was doing studies on just the seismics, the earthquakes and the shaking that it produced, which was also really incredible. And then there was me looking at these reports from a slightly different angle. And overall, we had about 151 now, because we have 7 videos submissions. And the team from the Astrological Society of South Africa was able to narrow these down. So they would go back, they'd cross-check, they'd do interviews and sort of validate these reports and fill them out with an interview. And so we have 131 usable reports after the quality filtering. And some of them, I wanted to focus mostly on the audio visual. There were some beautiful visual sightings, but they were very complex because people were seeing lovely colors and sparkling lights and all sorts of fun stuff, but they weren't quite as connected with the emotions and some of the impacts that I wanted to try and assess a little bit more deeply. And a lot of these were submitted through very accessible channels. A lot of it was done through WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. A few of them were emails, phone calls, and some of them were also site visits where we had to actually go to site to do certain triangulations, and they got to meet people in person. But the way that they gathered these reports was pretty low tech. A lot of it is just sort of a semi-structured interview. All the institutions sort of have a set of questions, like a standard set of questions of how they approach people, what key information they want to get. And depending on what they have observed, they sort of shift their questions a little bit, but it's a very two-way conversation. You have to listen very actively and try and pick up what they get deeper and deeper information out of it. So if they say it came from this side, slowly working back sort of through what they witnessed, where were they standing, what direction they're facing. So it's a very active and involved interview, which is nice because you really get to know these people and it gets you very good in-depth data. But a part of this sort of active interview process is you get beautiful narratives of what they experienced. And it was these little excerpts of narratives in between all of these reports, which I just found so magical. So again, as one team was doing trajectory and working out the math, I was looking at things like the attitudes and the understanding of science that people had when this event happened. And so, I jumped my methods, but this is sort of what the methods would have looked like. So in this type of content analysis, I was looking mostly at occurrences of words. So I would choose keywords in some of these reports that I saw coming up quite a lot. And these code words could indicate either a specific sound that they heard or a specific emotion. You can expand it to something like a thematic analysis where you look at phrases, but then that was getting a little bit too much for my new knowledge. So I was focusing mostly on total occurrences and counts. And I would sometimes add parameters like timestamps or certain qualifiers that I felt would add a little bit more meaning to some of the word variations. But I'll probably walk through those a little bit later. And so this is kind of just what the normal sounds, the simple stuff looked like. So I was counting how many times they referred to things like explosions or thunder or rumbles or bangs. And I was able to pull some interesting science stuff out of this, like a lot of accounts of people mentioning doubles. It took us many weeks to work out that there were actually a series of explosions as this meteorite entered the atmosphere. And yet we had this information upfront just from our witness reports, and we could get a nice quantifiable number of how many people were reporting it quite early on. So it was a very easy way to sort of bring this information out quite quickly. There was also things like acoustic waves, which are not typically sounds you can hear, but they will rattle and vibrate and shake everything. So I was able to look at these types of accounts and then feed it back into the team. But there's also sort of some more subtle things. So things which scientists found very difficult to prove or disprove. And those are things like co-current sounds. So they were really hoping that I was able to sort of break down some of these things. And a co-current sound is a little bit of a mystery. It's a mysterious phenomenon where you see the meteorite, but at exactly the same time you hear it. And they think it has something to do with how your brain perceives either the sight, the sound, or perhaps even the meteorite is producing some kind of electrostatic wave. And so it's an interference sound that between your ears and your eyes and your brain. And so for a long time, it was sort of seen as a myth, and people who were reporting it were sort of discredited. And so I was able to go through and break down how many people had seen it and sort of validate what they had experienced. And it's a real, like, incredible phenomenon because people as far as 400 kilometers away were seeing the meteorite and hearing it at the same time. So a strange mystery. They still haven't worked out exactly how these things are formed, or there's so many theories but none of them have gotten to the crux of it. But it was so nice to be able to validate what these people were experiencing and feeling. And then this is where I wanted to start having a little bit more fun with what people were connecting these sounds with, and work out what they thought it was in that first instant when they first heard the sound. And I was quite shocked by how many people thought it was a bomb. I wondered to myself, where did they get this experience from that they'd heard a bomb? But when you go through the reports, particularly in the Eastern Cape, a lot of them were referring to whale explosions, which I thought was very odd. But apparently when whales come on shore and they get trapped, to break down the body, they have to use TNT. And so that is where a lot of people heard sort of bombs or explosions or dynamite. And the rest was sort of from quarries or sort of active demolition sites. The other one that came up a lot was people often thought the sound was Air Force. So that's also a nice strong connection to rather work from. A lot of fireworks and then also a lot of artillery. It's a little bit sad perhaps that we do live in a country where people are so familiar with the sound of guns or rifles and artillery. Even cannons came up a lot. And perhaps if this had occurred in a different country where perhaps you don't have or you have stronger sound controls and you can't shoot artillery around residential areas, this distribution would look completely different. Or perhaps if you live in a country where they control fireworks, how people relate to the sound and what they think it is would be something completely different. They might think that it's probably like car crashes would be a much stronger reference point for them. But at least in South Africa, it sounds like bombs and aircraft and fireworks were sort of the top of what was at first in people's minds when they're experiencing it. And then I tried to break down some of the human reactions. And I was pleasantly surprised that a lot of the reactions were just excitement. There's also fear. It was difficult to break down fear to a single word. People have so many different ways of describing that they are afraid. I had to go back and almost revise it to be more of sort of a thematic rather than a keyword, because the way that they were describing it was they were either afraid, they were frightened, they might have been running. And that became difficult because then I had to actually work out the context of each word. But there was a lot of people who were just straight up afraid or in a state of flight and fright. A lot of people seem to be going into some kind of shock. And there was also a lot of unease. So this was also a strange one because some of the sound waves produce a feeling of unease because there is infrasound. So it was difficult to just lump this in with fear, and I had to sort of keep it separate because unease could be sort of an induced feeling from the actual meteorite itself. But it was such a lovely diversity of different feelings, so many complex feelings. People felt absolute wonder, or they felt happy. They thought it was just plain beautiful, or they were in awe. So it was such a beautiful suite of emotions. But I was definitely concerned about this fear response. And it was something that I want to consider developing in the exhibition, just in terms of crisis communication. You really don't want people to be panicking during these types of events. So part of the exhibition, I'll have to design in some kind of crisis communication so that when this happens again, if it happens again, people know how to react. And that tends to break down at least some of the fear response. It will probably never completely eliminate it. People will always have an instinctual hesitation, but you don't want them to ever feel panicked or shocked. So that was a key finding that I really wanted to work on in the exhibition in future. And then this was also fun, was there was a lot of animal reactions that mirrored this. But part of the animal reactions, which I found so much fun, was there was a lot of people that were either out birding or walking their dogs, which seemed more prone to observing the meteorite. Just because naturally they were out and about, there was a certain behavior that they were doing that made them better observers. And behavioral change is enormously difficult to achieve. And so this gave me some insight into what key groups perhaps I could focus on in terms of things like training or more targeted communications if I wanted to create sort of a citizen science base. Particularly in this area, there was a lot of people out birding. So if you could focus things on birding groups, there was a lot of people out walking with their dogs in particular. So you can focus on some of these groups in terms of science communication or citizen science and training them to sort of observe or be part of like atmospheric studies or become meteorite monitors. And there was also then a fun one, which I didn't quite know how to measure, but because it was a Sunday, everybody was out and about going to church. So we got excellent timestamps because people were either waiting outside to enter their 9 o'clock service, people either 2 minutes late and they were running to get to service before the dominee kicked them out. So we knew exactly when they observed anything because they could timestamp it perfectly to when service started on Sunday. It was absolutely beautiful. I love the Eastern Cape. But it really did give us a lot of interesting information about like the culture and the behavior of people in the Eastern Cape on a Sunday and what people were doing actively with their time. So let me see how much time I have left. Good. So I want to just go briefly into the design. I have done other talks on this, so I'll try and go through it fairly quickly. But these are just some of the drivers to the mobile museum and why I designed it. A lot of people that are locked into urban centers will be struggling with this, especially in museums. You know, we're completely nested in historic architecture, lots of different connotations to that. There's lots of aging infrastructure, urban blight, crime, and also just the cost of transport is starting to become very prohibitive to some of our schools, and it's difficult to get them into town. So we are trying to develop this mobile museum just to get out of the city and try to access some of our more rural communities, particularly in geosciences. A lot of our students come from rural communities. We have a very strong draw from people that are actively influenced by mines, and we try to get those students back to their communities. So we really try to get back to the rural communities, and it's much easier for us to get funding to go back to specific communities because that's where the mines are, and the mines like us to rather cross over and do, you know, outreach with their communities. So this is our trailer. We bought it in 2024, beginning of 2024. It's a huge sort of horse box size trailer, a little bit shorter than a horse box on a double axle. So I can tow up to, I think, 2.5 tons of mobile museum in there. this was sort of the basic layout as I was envisioning. I wanted to all kind of unpack into sort of an 8 meter by 4 meter essentially space, lots of space for me to work in and pack things in. I want to try and make a few display boxes because at the moment it's all tabletop based, which is lovely. So it's ready to go and I can go onto site with just the tabletop displays and equipment. But it's nice to have secure displays when I'm working outside or with large school groups because you have a lot of movable parts on your table. And if you want to take really nice specimens out on display, which you do because they're beautiful and they're inspirational, you do really have to be careful and protect them. And that tends to make you quite inhibited as a communicator. You tend to become a bit of a mother hen of your samples rather than actively speaking to the people who want to engage with them. But it's a nice little trailer. I think I can get a lot in there. So at the moment, I'm trying to build something like this that I can pack away in the back there. So this is the Eco Design Roadshow. They made these lovely carrier cases where you can pop up different information. And then I really loved some of these interactive elements from I think it's the Danish Architectural Center, but they're just so beautiful. I mean, it's probably going to take me a bit to actually machine it, but I have hope and I'm very determined. And then this, of course, is my pet love. So this is the Zico Museum pop-up exhibition. And it's lovely. I love the reconfigurable boxes, but it doesn't have any sort of internal structure. So you can't put any tension elements in there, whilst all the boxes will fall over. But it was so nice to be able to design something for this and be able to move all your little boxes around and adjust different elements for different heights. But again, I was also struggling with lighting because they're sealed boxes. You can't put any kind of lights in there or batteries because it's just very difficult to maintain and access. So this is the hopes and dreams that I'm cutting up behind me with my circular saw, but I'm hoping to try and build a series of boxes like this that all fit together. Amy's already told me that my wheels are way too small. So going to have to put a set of slightly bigger wheels at the back so it can move a bit easier. I've been testing which sizes work best on grass and gravel and all of this fun stuff. And so this was the mock-ups that I produced with sort of all the meteorite content that I wanted to put in. And it would sort of have something like the timeline. I still want to put in some of the sound comparisons. I really want to develop this rather from the perspective of what people experience. So instead of having such a focus on space and time and the solar system, rather focus on big sounds and build up people's experiences and context from there. I mean, you can go a lot of really interesting places from just big sounds. But in this box, you can do a lot of there. There is a sound box, so you can play the different kinds of sounds that meteorites could produce. This is a black box, so they can actually look in and see like a little fragment of space where the parent body is. It's all lit up with UV lights. So it's a very dark and interesting experience to look in there, and you can layer it and really give some depth to what they're seeing. And these are just different variations of display boxes and drawers. So I can put maybe smaller, more sensitive little meteorite fragments on display, and they can see meteorites from all over the world. And then start to build out a little bit more of the content for this side, which will be more focused on the space and physics. So that's my sort of outdoor configuration. This is sort of the indoor configuration where it can go basically as tables, a set of display boxes, and then some interactive tabletop activities. In the situations where I have set this up with just the tabletop elements, it has taken students about 30 minutes to move through everything. And that's about 15 minutes, like actually doing the demonstration and us talking and going through everything's on the table, all the information. And it's usually about 15 minutes of them exploring and touching and feeling and doing all of the activities, which is quite nice, but we tend to have to limit the groups. I've tried to take groups over 30 and it just becomes a bit chaotic and they're not having the greatest experience. So it's much nicer to take a smaller group of like 15 kids and you can really work with them and do all of the activities in a little bit more depth. So this is what it kind of looks like when it's unpacked in a space. at the moment, I just don't have display boxes. These are the lovely display boxes of the library. So I have to make some kind of display box to sort of safely display some of our more sensitive materials. But it's a really nice way to just unpack something, and it can be unpacked almost anywhere. That is the first year lab for the, I think, the biology building. So it fits into a lovely corner there for all of the science festivals, but can also be unpacked in a school hall, can be unpacked on the side of a road, can be unpacked at a mine site. So at the moment, I have 2 schools I have to go out to at the end of August. And we still don't know quite what our central location is, because it's going to be servicing a few schools in the area where I'm set up. But we can essentially set up anywhere. I can set up in a park or a town hall or a sports hall, anywhere. And so the next sort of things I need to do is sort of explore a little bit more about how I want to tie in sounds and explosions. But there's a lot of fun connections that you can make there. You don't have to always contextualize meteorites with space and time, because that's a long path to develop. You have to explain to them the solar system, explain to them why, the meteorite is cool in terms of the solar system forming, and why it's how many old, and how did you work out how old it is. But a lot of them came into this experience with, wow, that was a really loud sound. And that is an incredibly strong place to start. It's one of the loudest sounds that you'll ever hear on the planet. So why not start from there and break down, the biggest sounds that you can hear on the planet? Things like meteorites, volcanoes, earthquakes. They lend themselves very well to a earth science exhibition. And it's a much closer connection. It builds on their core experiences. And there is a large set of people with this experiences now, because even though it happened in the Eastern Cape, we had reports from the Northern Cape and all the way out to the Western Cape, and some of them even from the Free State. So there's half the country experienced this, and you just need to build on that experience. And even if they haven't experienced the meteorite, a lot of them have experienced large and wild and strange sounds. And then from there, you can always tie in, optional extras, go into things like hazards, and work in like, what do you do when you experience some of these geohazards and the risks involved and the human impacts. So there's a lot of nice connections you can make. There's also a lot of really great and engaging activities you can do. You can help them make their own meteorite impact, and tell them how momentum and the physics works. And this experiment is lovely because you give them a big ball, a light big ball. You give them a golf ball, and you give them a marble, and you give them a caddy, which is a little bit dangerous, but each one will produce a very different impact structure, and you can explain the physics with them and break down why each one is different in a very practical way that sort of engages them. And then they can always take the we can always make this slow motion video of them and give it to them as a takeaway, so that they have something to remember their experience by. But yeah, so I suppose the content analysis really just gave me a lot of context to build in. It was really great in terms of building up my exhibitions and finalizing my thoughts about where I wanted and what takeaways I needed to have and what I can build on. But it was also lovely in terms of two-way communication. The people who did the interviews are so engaged already. So we have this base now of people that have co-created this information with us and are still really invested and want us to go back and showcase this exhibition to their schools and their communities. So it sort of opens up a window to allowing people into your exhibition design process. And then also it really helped with identifying focus groups and people that already have key behaviors in these communities, which we could potentially use or leverage to, build citizen science interest groups. So I hope I covered everything. Are there any questions?
Wow. I did not expect that. That looks like such a fun project. I mean, it sounded fun from the beginning, but I mean, it's on a not a huge budget, and a one staff wonder. It's looking amazing. I really think you deserve a congratulations for this, Robyn.
Well, I always get lots of help from everybody. So I think poor Amy gets her ear chewed off regularly when I desperately need critique on designs. And then, we have a lovely set of technicians at the school, so they're great for helping me put things together.
That's great. I mean, yeah, teamwork makes the dream work, doesn't it? Does anyone have a question? Robyn, if you could take your slide away, then we can maybe see the whole room and we
Oh,
can
yes.
see little cartoon hands or real hands if anyone wants to ask. There we go. Oh, Amy, go for it.
Robyn, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, this is
Mm.
incredible. I really I'm very intrigued by how you've been in a space, a scientific community that is already going into the community, which is really cool. And then taking that and then informing um your entire exhibit, if we could call it that. I want to know whether how you could see something like this work at, let's use Zico because you've been there. Because I mean, for me, this is cutting edge, the absolute integration and not going to a community to ask whether it's working, actually hearing from them what they want to hear, and then building your program around that. How
Mm.
could you see this work in different spaces? Because I think you're in a really cool space that is already going out and asking people these things. But I can imagine there's other ways it could work really well.
Yeah, I mean, I was so lucky that this information basically landed on my lap. And I think the Astrological Society of South Africa really did a great job of going out there. Um, I like that it is event based. I think it's very difficult to go out and cold call and ask people to fill in surveys. The interest is usually quite low, but this was nice because there was an event, there was interest, and people really wanted to share what they'd experienced. So I think in terms of like museums, it would be better to focus on doing these kinds of feedbacks and getting these sort of like event reports. So when people have experienced something, either like if it's, Heritage Day, it'd be so nice to get people's experiences of what they just felt and experienced on that day, how that they, move through the exhibitions, because they might have a little bit more interest in sharing what they've experienced if there is sort of a key event tied to it. And it's not just run of the mill, what did you feel? What did you see today as you move through the museum? I think there's something about the significance of it. They really want to be part of an event that's significant. And as long as you showcase what you can do with their reports, I think people start to feel a lot more inclined to report. It was very difficult for the Astrological Society to get some of this information out of some of the more remote areas. And it does take a lot of back and forth to kind of get them to open up. And so a lot of the interviews did take over a few weeks, especially on WhatsApp, just because they'd say, yes, we saw something, but they feel a little bit shy in terms of reporting everything. And so you have to sort of validate who you are and what you're going to do with this information. I mean, some of them had beautiful audio clips, but they weren't very, the people they're talking nonsense on a Sunday, and they didn't want to submit some of this information because they thought that, we would judge them as scientists. And it's really just about building up the trust, having the, oh yeah, I just saw a question in the comments, but I think it was just difficult to build the trust. And it was, I think, having that open interview format where you just have a line of communication with key people really helped.
So, Robyn, would you like to answer the question that's in the chat there then from Judy? What did you use for the text analysis?
Well, I did it all by hand. I counted everything by hand, but I have been told there is something called Access or Axel that can do it automatically. You just put in your code words and it produces the counts for you, which would be very nice if I wanted to expand this to something like social media and look at the more informal reports on some of the key pages, because it's just way too time consuming to do it all by hand. But I have had a lot of help from one of my friends who studied social psychology, and they are slowly training me up in some of the tools that you can use to sort of broaden it out and do these things en masse.
Well, I love the thing where you were talking about the different sounds. When you started off with the different sounds, it was just it resonated with me in a way because we actually had an incident here in my tiny little village at like 6 o'clock in the morning. We heard boom, and my having grown up in Joburg, my first thought was guns. And then my second thought was, stupid, you're in Switzerland. There's not going to be a gun. Although, like, practically everyone owns their own gun and they ride on their bicycles with their rifle on their back. You know, it's like free for all, basically. Everyone owns a gun here. But it's so safe that I thought, okay, well, it can't be that. I have a building site nearby. Maybe something dropped from the crane or, something fell over, whatever. But it was really loud. And what it ended up being was a building that was storing fireworks blew up.
No.
So that's just listening to how you were saying, people thought this and they thought that. It's amazing how when you have an exhibition of any kind, people come with stuff that they've experienced before. They come with preconceived ideas. They come with all sorts of baggage or knowledge and that kind of thing. And you have to sort of try and account for that and sort of try and see what they could possibly have come with to say, well, it's not a gun. Don't worry, it's not a gun. It's just a meteorite, and it's an amazing thing, and it does this and does that. And I love what you're doing, and I really think it's such a good idea as well at the end with the whole trying to not necessarily change behavior, but just get a certain behavior occurring with an event like that to say to people, well, look, you can let us know what you've heard and seen. Take a video, take a sound recording, make a little voice note of what you're experiencing at that moment and share with us what you've seen, because you know what? Whatever you're citing could become an exhibit and could teach a whole lot of other people. I think it's brilliant, and I love your design. But let's see who else has something to say. Chris says
Chris,
he uses Claude.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I'll Google it and look into it because I would really like to expand and try and do these things a little bit more efficiently.
Would anyone else like to ask questions? I'm going to go up through the comments. I'm sure, Robyn, you can have a look there too, just seeing if there's any question that's here. How big are the boxes for the mobile museum?
Ooh, so the one I want to build is about, I think it's 1.5 meters by a meter. So it's quite short. I wanted to keep it quite low because, the tabletop displays work quite well for older children. But the younger children, I just struggled to find something fun for them to do. And I just wanted to keep it quite low and ergonomic. I also didn't, if it's too big, it's difficult to get in and out. So it's quite a small box, about 1 meter, 1.5 meters. And then the individual little boxes, they are about, I think, 25 centimeters by 25 centimeters or 50 centimeters by 25 centimeters. And I think all of them can act independently. So if I don't have the big case, I can still put the sound box on the table and they can touch and feel the sound box and interact with it just by itself. So it can work with the tabletop displays or the case either way.
That's a really good idea. And are they quite heavy? Because I'm assuming that you have one person who's driving the truck to wherever, and that one person has to offload what comes out of the trailer.
I think it is going to be quite heavy. I have to build a ramp in the back so everything wheels off and wheels on. And then it is usually going to be, we have, so it's probably going to be 2 drivers, and then we usually have about 3 volunteers with us to kind of help us move everything around. So it's just going to be a case of the more hands, the lighter the load.
Nice, true. And power supply for something like a sound generating thing, what do you use for power supply?
So I managed to get funding to get a little Blue Yeti power supply. So that'll sort of fit into the bottom of the case. And I think that'll also help a lot just to stabilize it because it's a big lug of like lithium ion battery. And then I also have a set of old solar panels from our camping trailer So they're not they've sort of been a little bit outclassed by our camping setup, but I think they'll work well just to keep a charge on the battery if we are on site for a long period of time. But usually the Blue Yeti should be able to power everything. I mean, if we're out for a day, it should be able to power everything throughout the day. It's only going to be like one screen and then a few, electrified elements.
Okay. Sounds like fun. Would anyone else like to ask something? Let me keep looking through the chat.
Maybe just some
Amy.
advice.
Yay.
I absolutely love the pulls and levers and all of that, but I would highly recommend you take your testers out for a few months before you finish the fabrication.
Okay.
We've done one very similar in the Sentinels exhibition. It was actually meant to look like a suitcase. And that falls apart all the time. And the simplest things we thought would survive. Yes, Chris, test with kids. Literally let them go wild on it before you drill that top panel in. Like I would just, take a little time and you'll iterate them out. But once you get them, they'll be solid.
So this is going to be my test one. I have budget to build 3, and I'm building one and going out to build at the end of the year. If they destroy it, it's good information to build the next one. But I didn't build all 3 at the same time, and that sounded like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Pascal actually would probably be an amazing person to give you advice on it.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were developing the Explorers of Levaya, which is also a traveling exhibition in Hawaii, one of the main things was they told us that the children hang all over and jump and climb all over the boxes or anything in their museums and exhibitions. So whatever we built needed to not topple over and not to be climbable.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the toppling. I think I'm going to have to put a support bar in that stops them opening the case fully, so there's always a right angle. Because I'm always worried about the toppling, even though it's quite a low case.
Yeah, well, feel free to get in touch if you want to chat about what we used as solutions.
Thank you.
Robyn, Anya would like to know something. Is this mobile exhibit leading to creating more citizen scientists?
I mean, I would really like to. So we are going to go back. Our main voyage will be back to the Eastern Cape. So we're hoping to go down there and do a few talks and interact with the community again. And then that would be a really great time to try and see if we can find a few more citizen scientists and sort of have workshops and train them up while we're down there. So it could be used as a nice little training hub as well as an exhibition. I think we have lots of little like digital microscopes and we have little computers. So it's a nice hub that we could potentially sort of shift towards training and education if we need to.
So one side of the box shows you the meteorite event and the other side of the box opens up and then you can learn how to be a citizen scientist. That's great. Anybody else want to put their 2 cents worth in? What else I had here? Oh yes, the meteorites. You said that you wanted to show kids the meteorites that have landed in the past and that you have shards of or whatever. Have you thought about 3D printing? I see that the Ezekiel Museums has just had a recent partnership with some medical labs, I think it is. Have you thought of that?
I really would like to. We do have 3D scans of all of them because they had to be CT scanned. So I would love to 3D print them. And some of them are beautiful shapes, like the one's this perfect little mushroom. So you can see how it entered the atmosphere and curled back and it melted. And so it'd be lovely to 3D print it. We do have a 3D printer on campus somewhere, but it's not the greatest quality one. So I'll have to try and look around and find some nice high quality ones. Or even someone that can help me blow it up a scale, because some of them are they're very small. They're like this, a 5 Rand coin. And it'd be nice to blow them up so they can see the little streak lines and the textures.
Maybe have a chat to Amy and see who her partner is. Or even, I mean, I think seeing as you're part of the university, there would be some 3D printing place that would be keen to do a bit of marketing maybe and help you out.
Hmm. I'll add.
Yeah, MedTech has done it on a marketing point of view, I think, for themselves, but we also want to look at it as a feasibility study, just because to actually like map out the hours of the scanning, the printing, the editing, all of that, to really look at how much it costs to do this, because some people think you just press print on a 3D print and it comes out like a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts.
The nice thing is the hard work's done, it's scanned.
Yeah, the hard work is done, it's scanned. My recommendation is you do lose a bit of the weight, which I can imagine with meteorites is quite a big element. So we've kind of looked at ways that you can like inject, what's that sand that Shane always uses? The magnetite sand, which is quite heavy already. Like just find things to like give, like you just like leave a little bit of an opening and print a plug to close it.
Okay.
It helps quite a bit just to give you a bit more of that. And the other thing is just to have one available to scratch. So you go, this is what it feels like if you actually feel the medium, but this is its shape. And then you kind of break it down into the sum of its parts.
Okay, we do have touchy-feely safe ones to touch. So that would be very nice. In terms of the weight, I was talking to fossil preparators, so the casting team, and they were struggling because we throw their casts around at the science festivals because they're also very light. And somebody suggested that when you actually cast them, you pack a bunch of buckshot in, the lead buckshot, and that should give the cast a lot more weight.
Yeah.
Good market plan. Regarding your catties, by the way, just thinking of buckshot, dangerous, you know. How do you work with the catties with school kids? And I mean, you're shooting into sand from a distance, I'm assuming. How do you keep things safe? And yeah,
we might have to have student demonstrators. I mean, some of the older kids, we can probably trust them, but the younger ones, we probably would use the poor student demonstrators. They would have to have very good aim.
I mean, it's good fun. I think that kind of thing would definitely like make things stick in a kid's head, because which teacher comes along with a cat eater class? So
true.
Oh yes, and also with the I'll have to think this one through. I made a quick note about the sounds of different things compared to the meteorite. But I'll send you an email with that regarding that, because that's still brewing in my head. But anything else from anyone else? Would you like to say anything else? Because I think this is fascinating, and I love the fact that it's sort of brought up other experiences and brought up other mobile exhibits that other people have made. West Coast Fossil Park, have you got mobile exhibits?
No, we don't have any. Well, we can go to schools, and we do go and do exhibits with our like fossil casts, but not like the box idea that has been brought forward here. So it's just our cast that we will go out and talk about that process of fossilization and the evolutionary things attached to it.
Okay. And Joan, I know SeaWorld's got a trailer and has had a trailer for a very long time. Do you have words of wisdom that you could pass on, that you can say, do not do this?
Thanks, Heidi. SeaWorld doesn't have one anymore because of the so we were using it to transport live animals, and the decision was made, one, in terms of maintenance of the trailer, and two, in terms of animal welfare. So we literally pack boxes in the back of a bakkie now, instead of a trailer. Again, because a lot of the areas that they used to go to were off-road, sand tracks, so very hard to carry a trailer through that area. Robyn, that might be a thing to think about, in terms of tires and width of, I don't know the technical terms, guys, so help me. I want to say the width of the axle, so that the trailer tires are approximate to the difference between the vehicle's tires, so that you don't land up having two sets of tires almost contradicting each other, if that makes any sense. But yeah, building sturdy. If you have a limited budget, as everybody does, rather do simpler and bomb-proof. Excuse the pun. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of flat pack ideas out there. We've been working on our new mobile bus, which is also a 4x4 essential. And flat pack ideas are amazing in terms of tried and done. They get thrown around, they get taken, mainly like the ideas of pop-up market people, and their flat packs are great.
Judy, you might also want to respond in terms of the trailer that was put together for the municipality that you and your team designed.
Yes. Hi, Joan.
Hello.
That was the Ocean Champs
Yes.
trailers. You put together a trailer, and it was all designed to be easily unpacked and easily packed away again. So it consisted of screens, it had generators, it had tables, it had displays, it had posters. So the idea was that it had a piece of a ground sheet, so that you laid down first, and that would be like your room, and then you would put up all the posters, so various posters, those what are those banners that look like teardrops, those teardrop banners, so that, and then would be a back banner. So now you're creating a room, and then you put up the table, and then on the table you put all of your displays. We had some of those blow up, I think we had some blow up pools that you could blow up the pool, fill it with water, and then you put your fish in it, so you could do your fishing game. So it was like a little mobile classroom, but it was all, it could be packed into the back of a either the back of a bakkie or a trailer, depending on what was available.
Oh, lovely. I'm
What
frantically
we've
taking notes.
sorry, what we've also used for outreach and still do is Judy's idea in terms of a gazebo, and the gazebo having three sides to it. So that you've got a back and two sides that immediately have information available, and creating a context for the kids that is attracting the kids first of all to your area.
Yeah, and having some shelter is also a really good idea if you're sitting outside in the hot
Oh
sun.
yeah, oh yeah.
Because I
But
remember the schools I
that's a
went to was
challenge.
really hot.
Yeah, no, that's a huge challenge because of wind and all sorts of things. So yeah.
Yeah, a weighted gazebo might be a good idea, Robyn.
We do.
We use sandbags. You can buy gazebos now where you put sandbags on the bottom of the poles.
Oh yes, I think they've got those with pockets as well, where you fill the pockets with
Yep.
sand.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Naval Museum had to do the opposite, converting a mobile seagoing submarine to a static display ashore. Visit our new submarine museum in Simonstown, says Leon. Thanks, Leon.
Just had to get that in, bit of free advertising.
Well, if you'd like to share some pictures to entice people, we would be happy to share them on our social media. And
Yeah, thank you. I'll do that.
yeah, I mean, we draw some more people in, and anyone else who has schematics and things like that, we'd love to share that with the rest of the membership as well. And you never know. I mean, you might get some good suggestions. You might get
Yes,
people coming to visit. You never know.
I'll do that. Thank you. Thank you.
So I think that is going to have to be it for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking part and for coming to listen to Robyn. Robyn, thank you so much for sharing. We love it when stuff like this gets shared because it's very much behind the scenes. It's very much, you don't really get to see it. And something like a mobile exhibit, only really the schools get to see it and the staff of the museum. It's not like a general person gets to see it. So it's quite nice. It's really nice to get that behind the scenes sneak peek. So if anybody would like to know more, please let us know, and I can put you in contact with Robyn.
Yes,
Robyn,
please.
if you don't mind. And
I always need feedback, so yes, please.
and if anyone has pictures or any advice or anything like that, please let us know. And yeah, we'd love to get our social media more interactive as well. We've got LinkedIn, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook. If you have a thought, or if you have you go for a visit somewhere and you see something amazing and you'd like to share it, please share it with us. Either go straight onto the social media or just send it directly to us at vissainterpretation@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you, everybody. It's been a great day. We hope to see you next month. We're having a workshop next month. So join us again, and keep an eye on social media and keep an eye on your email. Have a great day. Bye.